Thanks for
Yeah,
diving
no,
in here with us. I really appreciate it.
yeah, happy to do it.
Kevin, what's up?
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm still on the road to recovery, but I'm getting better. Thank you.
You're a wild man. I can't believe you're on here. You wanna
Yesterday
you,
was
you want
not looking good, but I'm a little better today.
you want to share with John what you've been working through?
I had spinal fusion on Friday, and so it's we're getting a little better every day.
Wow, man. Uh, was this a long-term, like,
Uh,
lagging injury or like a something happened event?
I had a prior issue, but this does not appear to be related to that. I think it's just degeneration and everything else that ended up happening. So
Oh, wow,
just the
man.
nature of it.
Well, praying for a good recovery there, man. That's anything with the spine sounds
Yeah,
sounds not good.
What's up,
it's
Isaac?
not fun. Hey, Isaac.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. Doing well.
Nice. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. So, well, we have everybody here. We're going to start promptly. I'm sure people have a hard stop at the end of the hour. Here's how we're going to do this today. Um, uh, I'm going to kind of dive into some intros here next. We'll move through that pretty quickly, and then we'll go through the three topics that we've been talking about as a group. And then we'll leave, call it 15 to 20 minutes at the end for open AMA. That's really fun. I would say for anybody who is attending here, please use the Q&A function here. I've set the settings so that you can also answer each other's questions. So all of the panelists here will kind of be following that in the background, and we'll chime in if we have any specific comments. But this is meant to be just super collaborative, and I'm really appreciative to Kevin, Isaac, and John investing some time in here and just like sharing authentically a lot about the entrepreneurial journey. This concept here is one that I think you have to have kind of been in the driver's seat to really appreciate that there is this kind of inherent balancing act as a brand builder when you're building these brands where sometimes it's like full gasoline on top end or top line. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a measured approach. Sometimes it's just really focused on profit dollars at all costs. And there's a host of different reasons, some of it being outside of your business, a lot of it being inside of your business that might drive you. So really great topic for the day, but mostly just really appreciative to the three of you for coming and sharing a lot of this with the crew. Let's do some quick intros. I'll start. Kyle Hensey, co-founder and former CEO of Chubby Shorts, spent the vast majority of my career building Chubbies. While we were doing that, we built a software platform called Loop Returns, which has become the market leader in the returns and exchange space in Shopify, and currently building Good Day, which is rethinking how young brands use ERP systems in the Shopify ecosystem. John, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm John Merris. I most recently, kind of the last 6 or 7 years, have been working on two businesses. The main one that I spent the bulk of the time at was Solo Brands. Prior to that, Solo Stove, and just kind of had a wild ride there. Kyle and I met actually through that business. We ended up acquiring Chubbies when Kyle was the CEO and created or formed Solo Brands together. So Kyle and I got the chance to work together, which has been awesome. We IPO'd that business in October of 2021 and had a really wild ride there, and then left last January, so about a year ago. And then 4 months later, started at Flooret, which is a direct-to-consumer flooring business. So a little different than fire pits and short shorts, but still digging it, and been there for now about 9 months.
Isaac.
Yeah. Hey, y'all. Isaac Mertens. I'm co-founder of Flux Footwear. We make athleisure barefoot shoes, spanning the spectrum of trail to athleisure to training. Been working on that for about 5 years. before that, I kind of got into the e-com entrepreneurial space of owning an Etsy brand. So we made industrial pipe and wood furniture, and then really wanted to build like a brand. You know, as we kind of know, on the marketplaces, Amazon, Etsy, it feels like, you know, you bought it from XYZ platform versus a brand. And that's really kind of where I dug in deep, in the growth marketing space, really in the paid media, Meta and Google. And then, you know, while I was learning that, was growing and building Flux, and now just kind of operating from a high level on the ops and marketing side, and then my co-founder Zach is more on the product side. So been doing that about for 5 years, and it's been a really exciting ride. It was right in as COVID was kind of hitting. We didn't get like the jump start. We were just starting, so we didn't have all the systems and process. So definitely an up and down ride, but it's been a really strong, successful past 2 years that we found a lot of product market fit. So excited for today.
Kevin?
Thanks, Kyle. My name is Kevin Lavelle. I'm the CEO, excuse me, I'm the founder and former CEO. I'm chairman of Mizzen+Main. Started Mizzen+Main back in 2012. Had a crazy idea to make a performance fabric dress shirt. I watched a guy run into a building soaked in sweat in college and wondered why no one had ever made a dress shirt that stretches. I'm wearing one right now. When we started, we were basically laughed out of every trade show, and at the trade shows is actually where I met Kyle and a lot of that crew. And so we've known each other for a long time. I stepped down in 2019. I was asked to go build a startup accelerator at a philanthropy while I was in the process of hiring a president. So I went 2 birds, 1 stone, and stepped away from Mizzen, but I've remained on as chairman and learned a lot through that process. We've done hundreds of millions in revenue. Had some pretty memorable viral campaigns, JJ Watt, Phil Mickelson, and others. If you ever saw Phil Mickelson wear a dress shirt while playing golf, that was us. That's how a lot of people know us. And I'm back in the game again. I started a pediatric telehealth and baby monitor company called Harbor. Nanit is a leading baby monitor on the market, and it failed on my family with my son being a couple months old, and I realized that apps on phones aren't baby monitors. So I decided to go back into the consumer products game. If I thought clothing wasn't hard enough, I'm building consumer electronics, which it turns out is a hell of a lot harder. And have remained close with Kyle and super excited with what they're building, and always happy to share my experiences. Forgive, I'm recovering from surgery, so forgive my voice, but hopefully we'll still be able to drop some knowledge, even if I sound a little funny.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, so we're gonna hop into this. So I think let's remember our overarching topic here is, right, when you're going into every year as the leader in the business, or even just across the team, you're looking at the year and you're saying, okay, what are our green shoots? Where do we have big opportunities to really run? Where do we maybe have some headwinds, et cetera? And so I want to start this conversation. And remember, the context here is like, there is this balance. You want to grow sales, of course. You really want to grow your profits. Sometimes you can't have both, and there are real trade-offs inside of the business. And so put yourself in the mindset of going into the year 2025. And I'll start maybe with you, Isaac. How were you looking at 2025? What were the big prevailing thoughts you had as you were starting to go through that exercise and set course for the year?
Yeah, really timely of this webinar. If you asked me like 3 weeks ago, I would have had a terrible answer / no answer. So like for all the, you know, CEOs, founders out there, like January 1, if you don't have like the idea, the vision, like, you know, literally last week, it took like 6 weeks to really just like digest what happened last year and like, hey, what's this path forward? And you know, as we know, in e-com, things move so quickly. So 3 really big things for us, and just to kind of add some context, because I think that's really, really helpful. It's like we've seen just explosive, massive growth. In 23, we did 14 million. This last year, we did just shy of 50. So like just some important context of like, we're coming off of just incredible, massive growth. And like, this is kind of where we're seeing this like reset year. And frankly, like it's really hit and miss. I feel like I've heard brands just crushing it on Meta right now. Right now, we're kind of struggling on that side. So like a top priority for us is really like taking some big swings in terms of creative, specifically on Meta and getting that reset. We use House. It's an incrementality platform. And we've just seen Meta being really incremental. Again, other brands are seeing that it's not being so much. So for us specifically, it is really incremental. And like going super hard and investing a ton of resources, adding, almost doubling our creative team. And just like, what does it look like to have truly net new, truly diverse creative? I know Meta preaches that a ton. But I think, and it's really hard to do. I think what we've been seeing and getting some fresh eyes is like everything just feels the same. It might be different new concepts, but instead of like thinking through what's a interesting ad or an interesting video that we've seen on Meta or TikTok or socials, what is it that's gonna invoke an emotion from our consumer base is really what I'm challenging the team. And Kyle, I think you nailed it in the terms of like this growth versus like profitability. Retention is another really strong suit for us and focus. We just brought on an agency. I live and die by this 80-20 rule. I think we were able to achieve this 80% capacity over the last year and really ramp up our SMS and email and volume. But like now's the year with like if growth from new customers is kind of struggling, how can we squeeze out the extra 20% and say we're flat, that retention or that optimization of 20% could ultimately realize that growth of 20% for the year. So that's a really big focus, and I think a lot of low-hanging fruit, frankly, for a lot of brands of just like how can you be better at that, and just like thinking through that. And then finally, new channel expansion for us is Amazon. We launched in September of last year and just found massive growth on that. Within like 3 months, we did $1 million, and really see that as like our growth lever this year. I mean, we're planning on kind of being flat on our D2C site and like all net incremental revenue coming from Amazon, and really just like understanding that. And like those are what I'm preaching my team are like the 3 things for us specifically, where it's like this kind of like simmering reset year, versus just like guns blazes and everything seemed to work last year. And the back half of the year, it's really been like, yeah, the playbook has gotten us, 50 million. Like, what does it look like to get to the 9 figures? And these are the three things for us at like, a mid-level 8-figure brand.
And any outside in trends or things happening at the macro that you're betting big on?
Yeah, it's been really interesting for us. I feel like we get a sale and like we just get swarms of purchasers. It's like I feel like the consumer's really price conscientious right now, but definitely don't want to like fall into that and become like the discount brand. I feel like that's way overused, but I think that's the challenge is like brands are definitely, or consumers are definitely willing to pay full price for the brand, the it brand, right? Or the product that they're seeing on their favorite influencers. And that's where it's like, what are you doing to invoke that emotion of like, what does it say about me if I'm wearing this product or whatever? So I think like that's frankly where I'm seeing is consumers are really either price conscientious or you've got to do a heck of a good job to like they're just tighter with their dollars, specifically in the footwear space. Like, and that's kind of why I'm seeing, and even in apparel and things like that. So that's kind of why I'm seeing like, top of mind.
Cool. Awesome. John, any thoughts you'd layer in on the macro as you were preparing for 25?
Yeah, I mean, I think all that Isaac said for sure resonates. Even just looking at the title on the screen, e-commerce and retail, I think, I love the combination of the two. I think maybe not just a macro trend in 2025, but probably the last several years is just this understanding that e-commerce and physical retail are just sales channels. Like they're just ways to get your product to consumers. And I think that if you go back 4 or 5 years, there was like this conversation, like e-commerce was almost like a business type, and it's not. It's just a channel. And so I like the way that you've like even phrased this topic, and making sure that like everybody that's listening is thinking about their business through the lens of like where are the growth drivers. And I appreciated what Isaac said, like our e-commerce, like our own D2C store is actually like projected flat this year, but we see growth by adding channels, right? And I think to me, from a macro standpoint, I see that as a trend for sure. Consumers want to shop how they want to shop, and they don't want to be told like you can only find me, on your website, or only find me in Amazon, or only find me in, specific retail stores, or even your own stores. You have to be pretty versatile, and it probably depends on brand and industry, but I think generally speaking, one trend is just consumers want a variety of places to shop is probably trend number one. I would agree with the price sensitivity. I think that that's a big trend for sure. And then the last trend that I would say is that the barriers to entry for building like meaningful sized brands and businesses in short amounts of time is that barrier to entry is like lower or easier than like it's ever been. I mean, sure a lot of you saw the report on Hims and Hers that direct to consumer health and wellness business that's come out. Like it is mind blowing, the growth that they're delivering at really massive scale. And so I think just understanding like the ability to deliver high quality product fast is easier than it's ever been, both for yourself, but also understand for your competitors. It's easier for everyone. And so if you're not vigilant about that and coming to market quickly and moving fast, I think speed is the new, Kyle knows this, I'm regurgitating, but Benioff is the one that said it first, at least that I read from Salesforce, but speed is the new currency of business. And if you're not moving fast, I think that you're at risk of being left behind. So those are the few things I'd pull out.
That's awesome. Kevin, anything you'd layer in?
Yeah, I'll try and maybe take a slightly different approach, because what they both just said is very on point. I think one of the biggest trends that I'm excited about is frankly making M&A great again, making IPOs, M&A, all that, with hopefully a new approach at the FTC and DOJ. I don't think it can be overstated how damaging things like Lena Khan blocking the Amazon acquisition of iRobot was, because of the broader freeze that ends up happening across so many different sectors, and the way that investors look at investing in brands and products and distribution and opportunities, all the way down through the real estate market and how people are opening stores and what happens. And so it remains to be seen how some of this is going to shake out, but it is the most optimistic that I have seen the investment community in years. I raised angel capital and then PE for Mizzen+Main, and with what I'm building at Harbor, I've raised venture. And the venture market over the last 2 years, unless you are slinging something pure AI, and before it was, selling monkey JPEGs, investors were not moving. They were all waiting, nearly all waiting. And when that happens, the trickle effects are really, it is so vast and it is so interesting to see. And the downstream effect of the frozen markets on things like ad agencies, creative agencies, what's happening with AI with some of these agencies, there's going to be so many different ways that this will play out that it's kind of hard to predict. So that's broad trend. The second thing I would say is the absolute chaos that is unfolding in the world of tariffs and international trade. It is impossible to make a prediction for what will happen tomorrow, let alone across the rest of the year. And so what I would say is you're going to see some brands that seem really strong that are going to potentially disappear overnight. And you're going to see some brands that catch the right trade winds that are going to explode. Isaac, I have your shoes. I love them. I didn't know that you had done that well. It's unbelievable to see a physical product brand achieve that level of growth, not just because of how hard it is to do, but because of the supply chain and the inventory financing and everything along those lines. But those that are well positioned to do so and are able to grab a hold of that moment, you're going to see some things explode. And then the last thing, and it's kind of related to those first two points that I just said, I saw someone posted a picture of Allbirds, their stock price over the last 5 years, and it's down literally 100%, and or 99.99999% to the point that Google rounded up. A lot of the people that have been championed as like the most brilliant, startup founder, brand builder, guru, whatever, all of a sudden, you would be a fool to listen to any of their advice because of the results that have ultimately unfolded. And so I think a lot of the conventional wisdom over the last few years will have proven to be either pure luck or, just they got it ultimately inverse. And then I said that was the last point. I am enthusiastically looking forward to, and I know I rub some people the wrong way when I say this, I hope that TikTok does actually shut down soon. I know there are some brands that have built a lot on there, and I don't begrudge any of them or any of the influencers that have tried to build their own businesses. It is a cancer on our country. If a deal gets done and it actually gets pulled out of China, that's great. I'm not thinking that that's actually going to happen, but having seen what has gone on behind the scenes and having seen ultimately the interconnected nature of it, I think if it gets shut down, we're going to see just this chaos in the influencer and Meta and Google market that will, I think, ultimately be better for the consumer and brands long term.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that's I'm internalizing things relatively similar to how you articulated that, Kevin, where I'm looking at this year and I'm imagining a world where some product categories are really going to have a lot of moving water around them, or are going to really be moving. I think the main one that I'm seeing, just from my point of view at Good Day, is a lot of the like better for you examples of X, Y, and Z are really, really moving. And there's a lot of juice behind that kind of world. And so if you don't have exposure to that, I would be considering, is there a logical way to get some exposure to that underlying trend? But I would then like that's like the big movement that I can really see clearly from where I'm sitting. But then on the other side of that coin, I'm kind of saying like, man, I just look at 2025 and it started out so chaotic. And my instincts are that there are so many unknown unknowns that there's probably more risk than reward giving your team a really scary sales target and saying you got to go hit that, right? I think that's like, I look at this year and the overall tone and I say, ooh, you're going to have all this chaos in the world, which is already presenting itself. My instincts are it's going to get maybe worse before it gets better. And I'm saying, how can I give my team as many chances to be successful with variables that they can control? And I really do think like if there was like a barometer of optimized profit versus sales, I'm definitely leaning and saying, let's get fit. If we haven't already gotten the company to be lean, let's do that. If we haven't put the right systems in place, let's consider that, right? And I'm looking at a multi-year trajectory and saying, yeah, like let's find some moving water over a couple years, but let's like really be oriented on the long term at this moment when it's just like so chaotic between the TikTok stuff, the Section 321 stuff, the total question mark that is tariffs. Your baseline assumption in the supply chain and in the ad platform should be uncertainty. Like it's going to keep moving around wildly. And like I say all of that comfortably. And I also say, if you're the, let's say that there are 10 brands and on par, yeah, 5 to 7 of them end up kind of having like the speed that they move. If you happen to be one of the 3 that has a lot of movement, like this is the time you can separate, right? So it's a completely different mentality given who you are. Like you might be the perfect machine to crush in this sort of moment, and being right on whether or not you're in that lane or you're in the lane where you need to be building for the future is, in my mind, like the most important job of the leaders. Like you have to be really clear on where you think you are. on that spectrum. So let's hop into the next topic. And again, just for anybody who's listening, feel free to throw questions into the Q&A. We'll knock them out, or actually just pull the questions into the overall discussion here. So I think this second topic is really meant to draw out specific strategies. So I'm curious if there are any specific strategies that might not be so obvious to the audience. I heard some channel stuff come through in the intros that might be worth pulling on a little bit. Let's go in reverse order this time. Kevin, you want to start?
Sure. I speak right now from a very different experience. We started shipping product in September of 2024 in a category with a very unique purchasing cycle, right? I was in a conversation the other day talking about, we don't have repeat purchases. You buy a Harbor baby monitor, and then when you have another child, you may buy a second camera, but we end up selling value add services over time. So I'm not trying to get you to come back to the site within 90 days to make your second purchase because I'm trying to optimize X, Y, and Z. So with that caveat, and also that we are so small because we just started shipping relative to some of the other brands that we're talking about here, my biggest focus for right now is creating a sense of trust and creating a connection from awareness to purchase in as short a cycle as possible. And then the third piece of that is we created a new strategy, which was for parents who currently have a baby monitor that maybe got it in a registry within the last year. They're thinking, I don't really love what I have, but I don't know that I want to go spend a fresh, $600 to buy a new product. We ended up creating a strategy to buy people's existing baby monitors from them, partner with a secondhand sale website, wipe them, clean them, sanitize them, upcycle them, sell them. And ultimately, I look at it as a strategy of, instead of giving $100 to Meta or to Google, I'm giving it literally to a family to help them switch into our product, which I never would have been able to pursue something like that with Mizzen+Main, just given the nature of our product. So that was the upcycling and trying to capture customers that might be just outside of our purchase window. Trying to shrink that window, we have this unique instance of our sales cycle where, Kyle, let's say you find out that you're going to have a baby and they're due, baby's due in August. You're like, cool, I want a Harbor. I know that's what I'm going to get. We've locked you in, but you're not going to actually potentially convert for 6 to even 9 months. And so knowing that, we have to try to get people much closer to when they're actually purchasing. And so we've partnered with a website called Babylist, #1 baby registry site. They are the Nordstrom, from my Mizzen+Main days, they are the Nordstrom of our category. It's a huge win for us to get in there. And so we're partnering with a lot of content around baby registries, because that is like, once you create your registry, your time to purchase is going to be probably pretty soon within that window, or someone giving it to you. And so focusing on when we're trying to get people to convert. And then lastly, on the trust side, we have partnered with a ton of influencers. We haven't really done any of the major influencers because their costs are just so astronomical. It just doesn't work for us. Where we found a lot of success is in that, and everyone has a different version of what size, but I'd say micro to mid-tier influencers, some of whom are explicitly rev share, and then others who there's a payment plus a rev share, or maybe just a payment. And what we found is everyone who sees these ads know that they're ads and know that we're clearly paying them. But in the world of momfluencers, these moms have built a brand where if they start just hawking product that's not good, they're going to lose that trust with their audience, and they're going to lose it altogether. It's a different story if you're just slinging another clothing brand, or you're just, slinging some sort of random thing. But with these momfluencers, they have to trade on their trust. And so being very careful and thinking through who are the right representatives, those have been the right trade-offs for us right now, where we're not spending a ton of money on digital advertising. It's on the influencers and then whitelisting those ads, because we are able to sort of double and triple down on that awareness and those conversion cycles. So I could talk about this topic for an hour, knowing that we have a little bit of time left and 2 other great panelists. So I'll hit pause there.
Yeah. I mean, one way that I kind of internalized your strategies there, though, is like, don't go play the meta game. It's like a drug, and you got to find unique ways in the
Yes.
world to get
Yes.
into other lanes and create
Yes.
some of those kind of unique things that only Harbor can actually pull off or would even try to pull off.
Yeah, and then importantly, always knowing where we are. So right now, I couldn't sell $10 million worth of product in the next quarter because I don't have enough inventory. I have levels that I need to hit, and then I, reorder that next batch, and it's electronics, so there's this complex supply chain. And so thinking through, yeah, I need to dramatically expand top of funnel, and I need to be deploying at mid funnel in the conversion, but I don't have to play a huge game yet, because if I were to do so, I would run out of inventory, and there's nothing I could do to bring in inventory, to short circuit those cycles because of how complex our manufacturing cycle is. And so, we play a little bit of the metagame, but not a lot because we don't need to yet. And so being very cognizant of where we are, we couldn't go spend millions of dollars on a top of funnel ad campaign because certainly we need to convert, but also we wouldn't have the inventory to be able to go grow at that level. Whereas somebody like Isaac, you're now looking to get into that 100 million, that 200 million, that is within sight. You have a totally different range of options to deploy that frankly you have to, or you'll never get there. Whereas we can say, we'll get there because right now, here's this next step that we need to hit. And look, that is both the beauty and the challenge of physical products is you have to make it to sell it. And so you can only chase so much growth at a certain period of time. But it also is very nice because it's very clearly defined swim lanes from an advertising and the growth perspective that we can do really well, which we are. We're crushing it with the lanes that we're in. Now we just need to get ready to go up to that next level.
John, anything you'd layer in?
Yeah, that's, actually a great segue to the thought that I had. Thanks for sharing that. I think, said a little bit differently, but it's the same message. It's understanding what your priorities are and then spending and your capabilities and limitations are, and then basically spending your time and resources toward like whatever those priorities and limitations are. And when I think about it, it's again, I can just speak from my own personal experience, and this may be applicable to some businesses and others it may be completely like worth throwing out. So take it for what it's worth. But there's really, like, I break it down to three things. If you want to drive sales, you can go innovate new product. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. It could even be a service, but like you go find something new to sell, right? In my case of flooring, like I could pick a new color. I could pick a completely new size of plank, a new species of wood. Like there's a variety of things I could go do. And actually, I can do that and I could drive sales while protecting profits or without sacrificing profits. The issue or the constraint is actually not in the P&L, it's in the balance sheet. Because if I launch an unlimited number of SKUs in flooring, it's really expensive to buy that stuff and stock it in warehouses. And so if I don't have an unlimited balance sheet, then that might not be the right option for me. And right now, I'd say that we're being very thoughtful about it and we are launching new products, but we're careful there because we don't have an unlimited balance sheet and most businesses don't. So there's the product component. Then you go into like continuing to doing what you're doing, which is kind of like playing the meta game, but like just going harder and faster, and not just in meta, but in all the other places you're doing it. And my experience has been, you can go drive growth in those channels, like doing what you're doing, but that's probably where you're going to sacrifice profits the most, is doing what you're doing. And what I've had the most success at when it comes to protecting profits while growing has been the new channels, which is kind of where Isaac and I were leaning just on the last conversation. I have found that to be the lowest barrier to entry and the lowest expense, especially when it comes to things like marketplace, because I already have the inventory. I already even have most of the creative assets, and now I just need to deploy them in different places. And so I think, again, it just depends on your limitations and your priorities. But generally speaking, if you don't feel like you've exhausted all avenues of like new channel development and you're looking to drive growth while protecting profits the most, that to me, historically from experience, it's just been the easiest or the best way to do that.
That's awesome. Isaac, Isaac, anything you'd layer in?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I find question interesting, right? Because it's like, how do you drive sales while protecting profits? And as I was listening to the guys think, I was just trying to wrap my head around that, right? And I think it's exactly kind of what you were talking about earlier. Is like it's a dichotomy. It's like it's impossible to drive. Very rare, I guess, is how I should say, to drive sales while just like scaling profits, right? Like my newbie mind, I'm like, before I knew digital marketing, it's like the more you spend, inevitably your ROAS is going to go down. And so I kind of wanted to go tactical with how we're thinking about this, because this is very similar to where we're at, where it's like we can drive for growth, but also how do you balance that profit, with the valuations with investors, and because valuation is based off the EBITDA. But then kind of going higher level. So I'll start really high level here. And like the general strategy, I guess, is like this obsession about contribution margin. Like I base all my decisions off of this X% contribution margin. I have an accounting background. I literally contribute the majority of my success in ecom is this financial understanding. And the idea of, if you don't have a dollar in your bank account, like you don't have a business anymore. I think that's just drastically undervalued or understudied. So like that's, I guess, how the strategy of driving sales and profits, right? Like if I can maintain that and driving sales, great. If I cannot, then there's that balance. And like I just am super rigorous about setting this, like this is going to be our contribution margin goal. And for everyone who doesn't know, basically it's your COGS, all your costs, your marketing. Basically, it's the dollars to drive expenses in your company. So that whether that be software or employees, to spend money within your company basically is all the expenses above that. So marketing and COGS basically. And that's what I drive the company off of. And then tactically how we think about that and the path to where we've gotten, to this 50-ish mil number is like, again, specifically, Meta has just been a really strong driver for us. So I can really kind of practically talk about that a lot. Is this idea of cost caps? I know it's a pretty hotly debated topic, especially on DC Twitter. But for us, that's really been how we've been practically able to manage that. You set your CPA target for a target that we know backs into that contribution margin. Now, what's really interesting is that at this scale, we've now noticed a compression. We're now noticing Meta just circling the exact same. Again, when we're starting out, it would be amazing to say this up, but like the same 5 to 10 million people, like just over and over and over, spent tens of millions of dollars now, and now we're having to explore. So I don't have a great number of advice on this, but now we're going to start looking into more highest value, lowest cost type campaigns to really drive this more top of funnel awareness. And that, I don't know, like that's going to be really interesting because like we don't have that constraint within Meta saying like this is where we need to hit. But from a lot of the founders I'm talking with, like that is a necessity to drive past that 50. So yeah, like that's where like the strategy tactically, I think for a lot of brands, I still would recommend cost caps, like especially starting out and not just like losing yourself and with it just being really difficult. We can, again, I could talk for a whole hour on the whole strategy of, creative and all that with Meta and how that helped with cost caps. But yeah, contribution margin 1,000%, I think overarchingly is like how you think about that, and like you have to. And again, it's tough because I think I'm a lot in the space is like you have to have 80% margins. I 1,000% gross margins. I 1,000% agree with that, but I also am like that can just also be extremely difficult to achieve to some extent. So like that's where I think you just have to get creative, but like the contribution number, like that is the number that I think without a doubt, however you get there, you need to figure out what that number is. And that's the balance that you can kind of play with. the sales versus profit. So that's taking like a financial tactical approach. I think brands just need to do that so much. And like, frankly, I don't think CEOs take that on the, like, that's your job. Like that truly has to be your job. I've been looking for like fractional CFO and this, and it's just like, I've educated myself enough that it's like, okay, I can do 80, 90% of what they're doing, but I think that's punted so much, or like have my accountant deal with it. And like, if you want to grow at lightning speed and like not raise a ton, not get a lot of debt, like you have to get to that place. And frankly, like it sets you up also for like having a deep understanding of this really difficult idea of driving sales while also protecting margins. Cause it is a balance. If things aren't going super well and it's super easy, it's super tough.
And I want to layer onto that a little bit, because I'm like you. I'm super passionate on this topic. I do think it's such a lost component to so many businesses, and it's sad because it's right in front of you. It's just like you just have to take the time to do it and get away from ROAS and all the other stupid metrics that don't really tell you whether or not you're doing what you need to do. The two things I would just add on that I know Isaac knows just from how passionate he is about this, that he didn't state like the obvious, which is one, like the reason that this is so powerful is first because it equalizes the channels in like a very tangible, measurable way. Like it's the problem is go back to my time at Solo with like retail and marketplace and your own site. Like you can look at if you just look at gross margins, you're like, oh, well, retail sucks. And like D2C is awesome. If you just look at,
Exactly.
D2C versus marketplace, you're like, well, Amazon's fee is 15%. Like there's just so many moving parts. But if you get it all the way to contribution margin, you can actually compare marketplace to retail to D2C. And then you can really get at its core. The last piece that I would just add that I'm pretty passionate about, and I've seen brands and I've talked to a lot of brands that have done this wrong, is for sure, like all things equal, if you can just get to what we just described, like that's way better. But if you get to that point and you feel like you want to go next level, figuring out how to attribute proper expenses to proper channels, you can go a little bit further than the exact expenses in the channels, because what you will find over time is that what you're doing in marketplace is enhancing or contributing to a benefit in retail or a benefit on your own site or vice versa. And so figuring out, it doesn't have to be an exact science, but we used to at Solo as an example is we knew that retail was being driven by Meta, but we were burdening the contribution margin with Meta 100%. And over time, we actually navigated away from that. And for us, we just picked a 15% number. So we said, we're going to burden retail with 15% of our Meta spend because we know that it's helping retail with volume. And we're going to burden D2C with 85%. That was the number we picked. You got to kind of figure out what works for you. But I would just highly suggest that you really think about your business. You know it better than anybody, and try to put those expenses into the right bucket so that you can get to that contribution margin that help you drive the business.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I've even seen some brands that are able to build a full P&L by channel all the way down to net income, which is like a whole nother pretty wild exercise. So you can take it. I think I would consider that sort of contribution margin view by channel as like a minimum expectation. And that's mostly because I've completely shifted my mentality generally to you better be focused on creating incremental profit dollars. And that's like, I know has sounded contrarian in the past, but is how most people build most businesses. Focus on making more profits, not less, is a pretty profound statement in D2C ecom world. And as I've been kind of internalizing this like strategy, the only thing or set of strategies I would pursue, the main thing I would layer in is like this focus on the actual people. So like you have a team, you need to set clear targets. And if you set clearly, this business, including every person in it, is focused on generating incremental contribution profits, that's going to drive a set of behaviors that are different than if you don't give them that clarity. And so I really do think it is the leadership team's job to provide that explicit clarity, round up the team that's going to execute against that clarity, and make sure that the entire incentive structure you put in your business is aligned with the clarity you just provided to the team. I know that's like super simple, but man, if you want to actually achieve these things and you're going from a revenue growth at all costs mindset to a profit oriented mindset, you have to change the behaviors of the people inside of the company. And so I would go to great lengths to make sure that you're doing that. Having
Can I
done
really,
this, yeah,
can
can
I
I
add
just
this
layer
really
in one
quick,
more?
Kyle? Yeah,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. Yep.
Go for it, bud.
Okay. I agree 1,000%. I also want to share practically like why I'm pressing upon like the founder and CEO have this mindset, because no one else does. Like they do not get it. They shouldn't. Your creative director shouldn't. So that's why it's so important that you have that mindset, because you have to wrangle it. Like you might get lucky that there's one or two like people that understand that, but even still, if they have like a financial profit mindset, like they will never have, and frankly shouldn't, like they're not the founder, I think that's over. You should care more than anyone else. So 100% Kyle, but like you practically speaking, like you still have to force it into it. It's not gonna be like, hey, here's a target, and then like they're just gonna know how to do that. Like there's constant reminders, constant pushing it. Like people are like, well, let's just do a sale. I said, well, that's like that sale is going to destroy the margin, right? Like it just in ideas and things like that. So that's it, just practically like it needs to be foundational, because people are going to throw out like ideas, which might be okay and good, but like, does it actually add incremental value? So I just think that's really important and practical. Like you have to just wrangle it basically, instead of just here's the targets at the beginning of the year and then expect it to happen. So
I want to share a specific example of like how just being clear on the intention and the actual strategy can just completely change the way you think about strategies, right? We actually experienced this at Chubby's. The goal for the company is to be incredibly incrementally profit minded and be thinking about incremental profit. We know we need to expand out of ecom and into offline. We have two opportunities. We can grow more Chubby's retail stores. We can expand in wholesale. When I run the math on those two channels, one of them has a contribution margin that's like 40% higher than the other. If I've set the system to say generate more incremental profits, it becomes pretty clear which lane you should go down. And in that case, it was wholesale for Chubby's, right? But without aligning on like, this is what we're doing. And I think that that's what I sometimes see people miss is like, no, we're just always optimizing everything in all directions. Like that's not the right mindset. You actually have to have a strategy and clarity around what is the guiding way that we're making decisions. And so I do think ultimately, having done this journey before of kind of moving that mindset, a lot of it did boil down to study what is profitable and is not, do more of the profitable things and less of the unprofitable things is kind of what happened. I know that sounds crazy and simple, but that is kind of how the journey worked out for us at Chubby's. All right, so do you want to get to the last question, acknowledging we have about 10 minutes? I would just say, and appreciate that I'm asking y'all to be a little bit vulnerable here. Is there any lessons from the past that are worth sharing? And we have I want to make sure we have some time for Q&A, so let's do less than a minute each. Maybe we'll start with Kevin.
I will never forget, and I use this example pretty regularly recently, when I thought Mizzen+Main was doing great. Everyone was pointing me to Outdoor Voices, which in whatever year it was, did 40 million in top line revenue and lost $20 million. And everyone was talking about how great Outdoor Voices was. And it's like, it doesn't feel like they have a business, but okay. And we just never raised enough money to lose that much money. We grew up in the 20 teens when you did have to grow a lot, but we just never lost more than 10% on a net EBITDA basis. And that felt like the right trade-off for us. And now we're focused on being much more profitable. And so I would just say, don't really stress about whatever the brands are that are doing things around you, because you just have no idea what they're going through. And if you forget that lesson, then just remember, when you look around you in your neighborhood and you see someone driving a nice car and, they're buying all the new stuff and you're like, God, what are they doing? It just doesn't seem like I understand. You may not have any idea what's going on in their real life. They could be bankrupt. They could be bankrolled by someone else entirely. They could, don't compare yourself to others. Do what is right for your business and your family and your life, as long as you've got your eyes on the right North Star. And then the second thing would be just to, one of my biggest mistakes was not seeking enough outside guidance early on. When I started Mizzen+Main, everyone I talked to told me my idea was dumb and I was dumb for pursuing it. So I ignored everybody for too long. Whereas in Building Harbor, I'm seeking a lot of advice and then just having to do my best to filter out the things that are extraneous or ultimately not that helpful in the moment.
I love it. John, any
Yeah, I'll
anything
just,
public?
there's so many. Don't go public. So, back to what Kyle just said, like super vulnerable moment here, right? Like Kyle and I actually got to work together. We were right there on the front lines together and like saw this unfold. But I just say like, not, I don't know, just there was a time for sure where it was just so fast and it was so awesome that I think we went through a phase of, probably, if I had to peg a time frame, probably 18 months of just, it was so easy everywhere that there was no strategy. Like there was no deliberate like approach or strategy to what we were doing. It was just like, wake up, run hard, care about the customer. Like we always had some North Stars that were like valiant and noteworthy, but it wasn't a real strategy. It was just be good people, take good care of our customers. And that got us really far. It got us to 500 million of revenue in 1 year, got us to over $1 billion of sales in 3 years. But as awesome as that was, we lost our way. And, I get to be the one that raised my hand. I mean, Kevin said it earlier, like mentioning Allbirds, and I'm probably in that same category. Like we were awesome. We weren't unprofitable. So we have that going for us. I mean, we generated an immense amount of EBITDA and cash, even up until when I left. But man, I wish there's definitely like a part of me that says, gosh, I wish I could go back and be more deliberate, and that brand and that business that deserves so much better than what it's currently going through would be in better shape.
I appreciate that, John. Isaac, anything you'd layer in?
Yeah, really quick for me is I'd say, I don't know if it's a mistake, but just like a lesson I wish I would have kind of known was, I always preach people and profit, people and product, excuse me, as like the things that are able to like scale your company. And that's what like, I just was young. I hadn't had a team before. I just didn't know, but like really understanding, again, this 80-20 principle is like getting to a place where you can do get to an 80% capacity of doing something, and then finding someone to, like scale yourself out of it. Right now, I joke with my team. I said, I'm trying to fire myself from all the jobs that I used to have. And like just realizing that hiring is like a critical skill. I don't think it's really viewed as a skill so much. And I just kind of like, just flippantly didn't really like think through the like seeking advice on that and studying how to hire, because of just what I've seen people, and the right people. Like, oh my gosh, there's just an unlock when and I'm sure we've all had that, like you find the right person and it's like a euphoric moment. So that's just another thing, like as you're, feeling good, ready to scale, is like thinking through people, how you do that, and like just the structure too is like really important and difficult. And I think it's unique for each company too. Like I think there's consultants that like, this is how you need to structure the company and things like that. But I think we found also like a lot of ecom brands were super bloated, and I had similar thoughts where I'm like, I feel like we're so understaffed. Like why we're this large and we have this many people, Up until last year, we had 14 people. And we did 50 million. So like that was understaffed, but it was like I knew brands that had 80. So anyways, people and the value that they have to the company would be huge.
I love that. And I would just say my like primary lesson just from the 12 years of brand building is just partly the genesis for this whole question is like it can be incredibly costly to have a sales growth at all costs mentality. You can get to the end of the year and be blown away by how much money you lost, like flabbergasted, if you're pressing on the wrong piece. And the day's over where the VCs are going to be there to catch your mistakes. And so I just like have really transferred my energy and mindset into this, like build this thing for a 10 and a 20-year arc, make the right long-term decisions, do it in a way that it has a great foundation and do it on your own terms is like a really, really nice way to build a brand and like be happy doing it, right? Like do the foundational work to do that. One of the ways I've shared this with people before is like, don't be greedy when it comes to sales dollars. Be greedy when it comes to profit dollars. Don't like leave sales dollars on the table, leave 0 profit dollars on the table. Go get all of those from a mindset perspective. And again, that's N of one. It's like I've had my own journey that's informed that. But I think it's been really cool to hear some of y'all's growth stories here. So do you want to open up to anybody? We have 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, drop it in the chat. We can kind of talk through anything. We did have an international question. I don't know if anybody here has anything they'd layer on. We also had a question around personalization that came through. Isaac, have you guys ever considered personalization or customization? Has that ever been a strategy you've looked at?
Yeah, no, it's so difficult. I mean, the best you could do is like an embroidery or something like that. But yeah, there's a reason why Nike, the largest, most sophisticated supply chain in the world. Like I know you can do some, but like they're the only ones. So I wish we could. Like I know that's a lot of unlock for a lot of brands, but unfortunately, no.
Maybe we'll just hit this international question as the last question. How are peeps or how are folks kind of internalizing international? Just given that these tariffs are pretty wild, the supply chains are pretty wild, international sales as a distribution channel. Are people exploring or being cautious?
I think your answer was good in the chat. I think that you need to be careful. Like everybody wants to say, it's like especially if you're going to market to sell your company, you're like, and there's this huge upside. We haven't touched international yet. Everybody says it. They expect you to say it. The reality is it doesn't scale as fast as you think. It's probably more expensive than you think. I thought we did it pretty well at Solo. We did it profitably. We owned everything. We didn't use a 3PL. We didn't use, like Globally or anything like that. We actually went and created an entity, like opened up a facility, hired European employees, and we were profitable year one doing it. But it did scale slower than what we had expected or hoped. And if I look back now, I think we could have gone and found the $15 to $20 million of revenue, either with new product or new channel in the US. And it was very time consuming. Like even just the one thing of like just traveling over there and like getting eyes on it and like helping build the culture there, like was a big mind share and a big time suck. So just be aware of that. And I totally agree on tariffs. They are so unpredictable right now. Just be super careful. And not just tariffs. It's like the whole like global geopolitical environment right now with like even like countries that have historically never been in the conversation. Like everything's at risk right now. Like every European country could go sideways tomorrow with our current administration, and you just don't know like what. It's very unpredictable. So I just say be careful with international right now.
My closing thought, and then I have to jump to a call. My closing thought would be not just on that international, but on everything. There's so much excitement about the shiny new thing, and I think very few people could say we had absolutely completely dominated this market and extracted every value out of it, such that we must go to the next thing. For years, everyone asked me, when are you going to do women's? And I used to say soon. And then eventually I was just like, no, almost every brand, every menswear brand that I know that moved into women's told me privately that they regretted doing it, because it's not just, oh, it's a new product line. You have to have different designers, different merchandisers, different social media presence, different advertising strategy, and. And so unless you feel like you absolutely have to do it because you are leaving so much value on the table, or you have so much excess capacity and cash and bandwidth to try it, I would continue to focus on the thing that you do great until you feel like the opportunity cannot be missed. So with that, thanks for the opportunity. Hit me up on X or LinkedIn. Happy to follow up with any questions if I can.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Cheers, y'all.
Thanks, Isaac. Appreciate
Cheers.
everybody attending.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. See ya.